Hi guys, welcome back to the Mina Does Art Stuff YouTube channel. My name is Mina and on this channel we do art stuff. I am back today with yet another colour comparison video. I'm trying to get a few of these filmed back to back, so apologies if I sound like I'm repeating myself because I have been. And yeah, so today we are going to be taking a look at olive green colours, and I have this odd little section up here because since creating these sheets I've acquired one new olive green, so I wanted to make sure to add that into this comparison series. And so instead of just doing a whole new sheet or cutting out just one little piece to stick here, I just did that. So I hope you don't mind. And yeah, we're gonna kick off. We've got 12 colours to look at today. As first up is actually the new one. It's the Michael Harding olive green, and all of these olive greens have slightly different colour mixes and will look slightly different, so this should be an interesting one. The paper I am using is Arches 100% cotton cold pressed paper. So be careful not to squeeze out too much. Should be enough. And I'm using my Da Vinci Coloneo size 8 round brush. I will have all of these and all the paints and everything linked below if you are interested in any of them, so feel free to check out the links below this video. And let me know in the comments below which is your favourite olive green, either from the ones I'm sharing with you today or if you have another favourite that I should check out, because olive green is definitely one of my favourite colours and I just love the earthiness. And it's one of those ones that can vary vastly between brands because it's a convenience mix colour. No one sells olive green as a single pigment colour, so it's always a mixture. It's not, there's no like one pigment that is, this is olive green pigment. So it's always a mix, which is why everyone's olive greens look so different. Then we have two versions of olive green from Schminker. Oh geez, I'm not with it, a mess everywhere. So we have Schminker's Permanent Green Olive, which in my mind is not actually an olive, but since it's named olive we will include it as part of this swatch series. I absolutely hate this colour. This is just not the green for me. I really do not like this one. It is just too garish, not natural. It's not quite blue enough to be like a forest green. It's not warm enough to be a natural like tree green colour, sap green or olive, anything. Like that's just not it. At least not for me. I know some people might love this colour. I do not. However, they also have, oh, sorry, I should say that one is a mixture of PO62, which is an orange, and PG7, which is a phthalo green blue shade. However, they have an olive green yellowish colour. They also have a third olive green, I can't remember what it's called. And this is a mixture of the same PO62, so that same orange pigment, but it's mixed with PG36, which is the slightly less popular phthalo green yellow shade. So this is not one that you see very often. You more often than not see the phthalo green blue shade, and that's the one that most people have on their palettes if they have a phthalo green and all of that. But the yellow shade is not one that you often see people have on their palettes, so kind of gets forgotten about in my opinion sometimes. But I much prefer this version of olive green. Okay, zooming in a little bit more. Then we have Turner's olive green, and their version is a mixture of PG7, that's phthalo green, PY110, which if I'm not mistaken is it Tassalone yellow? It's a yellow, and PR101, which is like an earthy red pigment. And this is also a beautiful shade of olive green. To be fair, there's very few shades of olive green that I don't like, and there are a couple coming up, so we will take a look at those. but these ones I do quite like. Next up we have Holbein's Olive Green, and this is one I'm not a huge fan of. It's just a little bit too far into the brown side of things, in my opinion, for my tastes, for what I like. This is a mixture of PY150, which is a Nickel yellow, PG7, which is that phthalo green, and PBR25, which is a sort of like a transparent brown. It's another sort of very red brown leaning colour. So I find with this one the Nickel yellow really sort of shines through, but not in a nice way. I don't know. This one reads like a really dirty green gold kind of colour, which is not what I was looking for from an olive. I mean, to be fair, this one's probably more accurate as an olive colour, like if you think about an actual olive. But as a shade of, sorry, that was off camera, I'm so sorry. As a shade of olive green for painting, I do not like this one. This is not my favourite at all. Okay, going from one that I absolutely dislike to what I consider to be my perfect olive green, or my favourite anyway at the moment. We'll see if it changes after all of this. And that's the Sennelier Olive Green. This is one of my favourite ones, if not my favourite. And this is a mixture of PY150, which is that Nickel yellow, which in this case gives it a really nice warmth and richness. PG36, so back with that phthalo green yellow shade, and PBR23, which is another brown. And again, this is a very natural green colour that I absolutely love, and I would happily use it straight from the tube or the pan as is, or mixed with other colours. It's just one of my absolute favourites. Definitely a ride or die colour for me. I don't think that's going to change, but it'll be interesting to see when we get to the end of this. Then next up we have the olive green from Winsor & Newton. That's just over here, give that a second. This one is a mixture of PY65, PB15:6, so that's a phthalo blue red shade, and PR101, so again that red earth pigment. I used to really like this one, but I kind of feel like it's a bit weak compared to some of the other olive greens. It's very muted, which is quite nice for an olive, especially because, and we'll see it in the sap green episode, Winsor & Newton sap green is quite bright compared to some of the others, and so the muted olive green kind of works quite well with that bright sap green in mixtures. So whenever I'm using this palette, I often mix the olive green with the sap green to brighten it up a little bit. But it's not a bad colour on its own. Again, it's fairly accurate as like an olive colour, but I just love that Sennelier olive green so much. And I feel like it's much easier to mute a colour than it is. It is much easier to mute a colour because you can't really make a colour brighter once it's already muted. It's not really possible. Then next up we have Roman Schmall, and I have their olive green light. And this is a 4-pigment mix, which is huge. That's a lot of colours. This is a mixture of PB29, so that's ultramarine blue, PY129, which is green gold, PY150, which is that Nickel yellow, and PBR25, which is that transparent brown colour. And again, this is slightly more on that browner side, but with that sort of green gold, Nickel yellow hue shining through. But I don't find it as offensive as the Holbein one for some reason. It's slightly more green leaning than the Holbein one. It's still, this is not my favourite at all. Like, I do not consider this to be a pretty olive green, but I do like it better than the Holbein. It's definitely not a favourite, but do not dislike it quite as much. Alright, next up we have the White Nights olive green. This is not one that I mean, I don't mind it. I've hit pan on this one, but I never replaced it back then, back when I used this palette more. Because of the mixture, it was an odd mix, this one. It's PG17, which is chromium green oxide, or chromium oxide green. PY1, which is, from my understanding, not a very light fast yellow pigment, and PBK7, so a black as well, which doesn't really show through, thankfully, but again, odd to have a black in this mixture. Sorry about that, my camera battery died. So what I was saying was, with the White Nights olive green, I never replaced it. It's not my favourite. It just looks a bit muddy. It's not particularly, I mean, it's not the worst hue, but it's not my favourite. It also goes down really streaky. This one doesn't go down particularly smooth on any paper. Like on cotton paper it's not too bad, but it's just a hard one to get a nice smooth layer. It doesn't mix too bad considering it's a multi-pigment, how many pigments are in it, but it's not my favourite, not by a long shot. Okay, so let me find my Daniel Smith, which is the next colour, olive green. I think it's this one. Yeah, this one's another one that I really like. This is a fairly new one to my collection. This is a mixture of PY97, which I think is that Arylite yellow, PB29 ultramarine blue, and PBR7. So, and I've mentioned before, PBR7 can be a multitude of colours. It can be anything from a raw sienna to a burnt umber, and raw sienna, burnt sienna, raw umber, burnt umber, all of these can be PBR7s as well as other variations, so it's hard to know which one it is exactly. But this is also one that I really like. It's not quite as bright as the Sennelier, but it is still a really nice one, and I do enjoy using this olive green. Next up we have Da Vinci's olive green. This is a mixture of PG7, which is phthalo green, and PY42, which is yellow ochre, which is an interesting mix. So that's over here. I quite like that one. It's a nice brighter olive than some of the others. It's not totally muted out, which I like. And finally we have the Lucas olive green, which I don't currently have in a pan. I'm just going to take a little bit out of the cap because I don't want too much. Technically, I say technically, like best practice says you're not supposed to dip your wet paint brushes into your tubes of paint because you can potentially contaminate them with bacteria and stuff, but I've never had a problem doing it, so. Alright, so this is a mixture of PG36, so again that phthalo green yellow shade, and PO36, so it's an orange. It's a fairly muted olive green, like probably more muted than any of the others, but without that sort of brightness in the undertone. It's interesting, on camera it looks a lot brighter than it does in person, so we'll see how this dries. At the moment, this is definitely not a favourite, but we shall see. Alright, so that's all of these colours now swatched. You can see that White Nights one is quite streaky. I'm going to set this aside, wait for it to dry, and then we will come back and take a look at them. Alright, swatches have dried and we are back with our olive colours. I think this probably has to be one of the ones up there with indigo that has the biggest variety of actual colours within the one colour name. Probably even more so than indigo, to be honest, but olive clearly runs the gamut of different shades of green, and I do really like a lot of varieties of olive. I'd have to say my favourite one on this page, and I'm kind of surprised, is probably Michael Harding's olive green. That and the Sennelier olive green. The Sennelier olive green is definitely a bit lighter, but it packs such a punch that it mixes really well with other colours, and it's really easy to shift this to be darker or lighter as you prefer. That Michael Harding olive green, I've not had a chance to paint with it yet. It's a very new colour I added to my collection. If you saw my, I don't know when this video is coming out, but if you saw the vlog I did from the trip to London, I did, when was that, in like end of September, early October sort of time. That's when I picked up this paint in person from Jackson's in London, and I absolutely love it. I think it's beautiful and I'm so glad I got it. So I said Michael Harding and Sennelier olive green are probably my favourites. I also really like the Daniel Smith olive green, but I think this one, if I had this on my palette, I wouldn't need to have like a green gold, because I feel like this would fill the space of a green gold. It would do a very similar job on a palette. Like I feel like this colour and that colour are so vastly different. I could have both on a palette and not feel like I didn't need it, if that makes sense. Winsor & Newton's olive green is nice. It's just a bit dull. I don't like Schminker's permanent green olive. I don't even think that's an olive colour in my opinion. I like the Turner olive green. That's really pretty. Even Schminker's olive green yellowish is quite nice. Muted but pretty nonetheless. Lucas's olive green is just very dull and don't like it at all. White Nights olive green, again, I don't know why it's got black in the mix and it just creates this really patchy dull colour. Do not like that. I think Holbein's olive and even the Roma Schmall olive green light, very brown leaning, and not in a nice way. Like I feel like the Daniel Smith one's also brown leaning but in a nicer way. At least to my eye, this one, like I said, looks more like a green gold, whereas these two just look ugh. Again, this is all my opinion and just my preferences, so I'm no to these three. No to the Winsor & Newton and the Lucas. I'm alright with the Schminker. If I have it on a palette, I will use it. I don't have a strong feelings either way. And the Da Vinci olive green, again, no real strong feelings either way. It has some interesting granulation because of that yellow ochre pigment that's in there that's slightly granulating. So it's got some interesting texture as well. But I'd say my favourites, Daniel Smith, Sennelier and Michael Harding for this lot. So let me know down below, which is your favourite version of olive green? Is it one of these? Is it a different one? Let me know. I love olive greens, and so I'm always on the lookout for different versions. And I look forward to hearing which ones are your favourites. Oh, and Turner was the other one I really liked as well. But if I was going to pick only three, it would be those three. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!